Hello, I'm Dr. Sherry Dean, a member of the speech faculty here at Richland College. Welcome to this presentation on developing intercultural communication competence. As you know from reading your course syllabus, there are a number of learning outcomes associated with your speech class. Speech 1311 is a communication survey course, and it's going to be one of the most interesting and dynamic classes that you will take as a part of your core curriculum here at Richland. And I hope you're already getting a sense of that from interacting with your instructor and your classmates during these first few days of the semester. One learning outcome of particular importance is understanding and respecting diversity. Now, a focus on understanding and respecting diversity in this class is in response to recent significant changes in our contemporary society called globalization. Communication and transportation technologies such as computers, air travel, satellites, emails, texting, all of these have erased the traditional time and space boundaries that have existed for most of human history. So if you have a computer and internet access, you can set up shop literally anywhere in the world today. And many U.S. companies have done just that. As a result, literally millions of U.S. jobs have been exported overseas in the last 30 years. There's a new global economy which has literally reduced the planet from a size large to a size small. And the mantra of this new global economy, according to economist and Pulitzer Prize winner Thomas Friedman, is cheaper, faster, and better. Now, at this point you might be thinking, okay, so how does this really affect me? Well, it means that unlike the experience of your grandparents or even your parents, when you graduate from college, you will likely be competing for every single job you will ever hold from now till your retirement with people from other countries. You truly are competing in an international jobs market. That means you have to know more about the world and learn to speak another culture, not just another language, to ensure and maintain your future professional success. Another reason that understanding and respecting diversity deserves formal study is that the United States is a country of immigrants from literally every corner of the planet. You and your family might be one of them, or you might be one of the many international students studying here at Richland this semester. In fact, take a moment to look around your classroom, or if you're enrolled in an online course, take a moment to check out the posted photographs of your classmates. What do you see? A lot of diversity. And in this regard, Richland is a microcosm of our own city of Dallas, where there is no single ethnic group that has a population majority today. Thus, the goal of this presentation is for you to increase your intercultural intelligence and practical communication skills. So, let's begin. At this point, you already have taken a brief pretest on a set of intercultural communication principles. Now, you might have experienced some frustration if much of it was unfamiliar to you, but don't worry. Once you finish this presentation, you will take the test again so that you can measure what you've learned and then have a simple application exercise. You're going to be impressed by how much you know. So let's begin. In this presentation, we're going to define culture and discuss the elements of culture that affect our interactions with other people. Second, we will generate a common language to use to discuss cultural differences. We're going to also bring into consciousness the ways that we are different from other people. We will distinguish between stereotypes and useful generalizations. We're going to increase our cultural self-awareness. And then we're going to spend quite a bit of time identifying 5 distinct cultural building blocks that influence interactions across cultures. And then the end goal is to increase our knowledge and improve our skills for bridging those important cultural differences. So what is our goal? This is not about memorizing endless lists of do's and taboos. After all, there are almost 200 countries across the globe, and it would take a lifetime to memorize all of the cultures that are found in each of these countries. Rather, our goal is to understand some basic concepts of culture and cultural difference. So let's begin to think about what a culture really represents. A child sees a fish swimming in the pond, and he asks the fish, "Hey, what's the water like?" What does the fish respond? Well, he responds, "What's water?" The fish does not know that he has been born into water and he actually depends on it for his very life. In the same way, we as U.S. Americans, like most people around the globe, are completely clueless that we are also swimming in the same kind of water, and that water is called culture. It forms who we are, what we do, how we behave. A metaphor that is really useful for us to conceptualize culture is as a software program, if you will. Think of culture as being software of the mind. So whenever you meet someone from a different culture, you're actually going to learn to read their software program. Now, why is that important? Well, the fact is that the United States represents about 6% of the entire world population, 6%. And we still remain an economic powerhouse globally. However, our U.S. American cultural norms are reflected in only 25% of the world's population. That means that 75% of all people across the globe think very differently than we do. They see the world differently than we do, and they behave very differently than we do. And that creates a very exciting opportunity for us to learn about others. So now let's think about what culture is. Let's begin with the definition. It is a collection of values, meaning what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong. And it's a collection of assumptions that shape the way that a group of people perceive and relate to their environment. And how do we know a culture when we see it? Well, we understand it through behavior. And as one author has said, culture is absolutely everything. A second metaphor to conceptualize culture is that with the iceberg. Now, if you've ever seen an iceberg, you know that it's really a magnificent structure. But the most important part of that structure is not what you see above water, but rather what is below water, as you can see here in the two visuals. And culture is very much like that. The above surface culture, which we call the big C culture, is very different than the attitudes or the small c culture that are below the surface. So in above surface culture, these are things that we see by going to a concert, to a museum. It's the music of a particular culture, the literature, the heroes, painting, going to the Dallas Museum of Art or to the Kimball, dance forms, architecture, the food, the drink, and the way that people dress. All of that is what you can see above the surface of the water, if you will. However, below the surface are those ideas, those ways of thinking and being that inform what you see above the water. So that would be the concept of self. What is truth? What is friendship about? What does it mean to be fair? How do people approach their work? How do they approach time? How do they prefer to communicate with others? And what is the tolerance for risk? All of these items then are considered below surface or little c cultural items. So now let's take our first quick quiz. Name one type of above surface culture that you've just learned, and then name one type of below surface culture. Just take a moment to do that. Good. Now that we know a little bit about the definition of culture, we want to be careful because there is a challenge. Whenever we meet people who are different from us, who come from different cultural backgrounds, a common mistake is to assume sameness. And when we assume sameness, we often then misread behaviors. And the result of that is a cultural incident. And whenever there's a cultural misunderstanding or an incident, it often causes unnecessary misunderstanding and even conflict. And so we really want to be aware of that and how to reduce any misunderstanding as we interact with others who are different. So the goal, again, of our time together is to understand the other, how the other person thinks, what their worldview is, so that we can minimize risk as we're interacting with them. So to review, how people think would be considered a worldview, and how the thinking informs the behavior is what we would call culture. To summarize, culture then is a learned way of thinking, a learned way of being, and a learned way of behaving. Now that we know all of this, let's think about what it means to interpret a behavior. Have you ever thought about that? Well, there are three ways that we can interpret the way that someone is behaving. The first is what we call universal behavior, and this comes to us from Craig Storty from his excellent book entitled Figuring Foreigners Out. In fact, a lot of our presentation today is based upon his work. And he says that all people across the globe, they have certain universal shared behaviors, including eating, sleeping, and speaking their mother tongue. When you move away from a universal behavior to a cultural behavior, you can think of it as being how people celebrate the end of the month of, let's say, October. And in U.S. American tradition, we celebrate Halloween, which is very different from Mexico, which celebrates the Dias de los Muertos. And we know that those two celebrations are actually very different from one another. Another cultural kind of behavior would be what we as U.S. Americans do on Thanksgiving Day, watching football games and having a grand meal with our family and our loved ones. Moving from universal and cultural behavior, we also have individual behaviors. And that means all of us have personal idiosyncrasies. We do things not because we come from a particular culture, but because it's just who we are. So a person might sleep with their bedroom window open all year long, regardless of how hot it is or how cold it is, because they can't sleep without the window being open. Or perhaps the person who's graduated from UT Austin, and they love orange, and they bleed orange, and they wear that orange suit to work. It has nothing to do with their culture. It's not a universal behavior, obviously. It is simply an individual preference. So those are the three ways that we can interpret a behavior: universal, cultural, and individual. And look at the continuum that we have here. The danger is that whenever we misread behaviors, sometimes we can stereotype people. And I know all of us have been stereotyped. And it doesn't feel very good. We can have negative stereotypes as well as positive stereotypes. But a stereotype is simply a commonly held, often accusatory assumption about a group of people. And so when we misread a behavior, we have to be careful, because stereotyping actually reduces our ability to communicate effectively with those who come from different cultures. So let's remember that. In this continuum, we have three choices. Are we looking at a universal behavior? Is it a cultural behavior? Or is it an individual behavior?